So my name is Kate, and I'm the owner of Guided Parenting Support. And it's a consulting company that is exactly what it sounds like. Parenting is a long and often bumpy road, and it doesn't come with a roadmap. So parents are always in the driver's seat of their own family, but I go along for the ride as that GPS in the passenger seat, offering some gentle guidance and ideas and suggestions. And often we're able to get to the root of some of the issues that families are having pretty quickly and put some strategies in place to get things back on track. So if anyone is interested in chatting later a little bit more about what I do specifically, I'd be happy to. But I want us to get going. So this recent time has been, very much a juggling act for families, or feels like walking a tightrope. Everything is different, and everything is harder. And a lot of us have just been kind of holding our breath and desperately waiting for this to go back to normal. And as we're starting to realize, normal isn't going to come back the way that it was before. And it's our new normal is going to look very different. And for families, as summer's approaching, some families are really excited that there isn't going to be school anymore because it frees up some time for other things. And other families are thinking like, oh no, now there's no school. What am I going to do with my kids for all this time? So, whether we like it or not, summer is coming. And we thought this is a great opportunity to start preparing a little bit for, what summer could look like in a really positive way for a lot of families. So the things that we are working towards are, practical strategies that are going to make your lives easier in the short term, and things that are also going to develop the skills and the attitudes and the values in your kids over the long term that are going to turn them into successful adults who are not living in your basement when they're 40, because that is always the goal. The purpose of parenting has always been to prepare adults for an unknown future, because if you pour 18 years of love and effort into a human and they're still a child at the end of that, you're in a difficult spot. So, we're working towards getting those opportunities. So I'm just going to skip back for a second. One of the, give me 1 second. In addition to increasing the skills and the attitudes and the values that we want our kids to have as they grow into adults, in the short term, we also need to do 2 things. We need to decrease interruptions for you, and we need to increase cooperation from them, because that's really the only way that everyone is going to thrive during this period of time, and then beyond, when things do start to settle down and find a new normal. If we can have decreased interruptions, increased cooperation, and an increase of those life skills. So I want to start by talking about ways to decrease interruptions for your family, kind of in the day-to-day. The goal is to get chunks of time where you can actually get some things done, and where your children can be meaningfully occupied in ways where they don't need you every second. So let's talk about decreasing interruption strategy number 1. This is, if I can recommend nothing else, if you do nothing else for the rest of this summer or year or the rest of your child's life, it's this one thing. And I call it taking the family's emotional temperature. But what it means is, in the morning, right now, no one is rushing to get out the door, right? You're all home, and you might be getting up a little bit before your kids to get some work done. But when your kids wake up, stop and breathe and take a few minutes. It doesn't have to be long. It could be 10 minutes, or if you have a little longer, 15 or 20 minutes. This is especially great. I know we've got some parents at that 4 to 6-year-old range on right now, and it's especially great for that age group. Stop what you're doing, okay? Pour yourself a cup of coffee and sit down with your kids, okay? It's not it's not a time for big revelations or deep conversation. It's just a time to connect first thing in the morning. And during that time, you can do a puzzle. Or if your family's working on a puzzle, you can do a few pieces. You can do a crossword puzzle. You can play a card game. You could just sit and chat. It should be device free and just you and your kids, hanging out. And that's doing two things. The first thing that that's doing is it is guaranteeing that your kids are getting uninterrupted, quality, device free time with you to start their day. And that's going to help out with some of those attention cravings down the road. Okay. And the other thing it's going to do is it's going to give you the opportunity to take the family's emotional temperature. Did your kids come bouncing down the stairs super happy and excited? They slept great. They're ready to start the day. Awesome. This is a day where they can be more independent, or maybe they've got some summer school stuff they're working on. Great. That's the time for that. Did they drag themselves down the stairs and they are bleary-eyed and they're tired and they've already fought with their sister 3 times and it's not even 7 in the morning? Today's going to be a more difficult day. So you're taking the family's emotional temperature, and you're also taking your own emotional temperature, right? You might have had a terrible sleep, or you've got a big presentation on your mind, and today's not going to be your best day. So you're taking that information and you're using it to set your family up for success by adjusting your expectations right off the bat. And the first thing that I mentioned about giving that guaranteed kind of hit of attention, our kids have been put in a difficult situation because BC, before Corona, they were often in the situation where, everyone would go out the door in the morning and they would go to school and parents would go to work. And then at the end of the day, after all of the activities and the homework and all of that, there was a very short amount of time for families to spend together. So parents would often wait and unload the dishwasher and take the dog for a walk and take out the trash and put in a little laundry after the kids were in bed. So the kids were used to this scenario where any time that they were home with their parents, they were getting undivided attention because it might have only been an hour or two. But they got trained to think that any time in the house with their parents is now time for undivided attention. Well, now they're in the house 24/7 with their parents. So their reality has shifted, but the structures aren't in place to change their training. And it's nobody's fault. It's just the reality for a lot of families. So the interruptions that are happening during the day are often the result of them wanting and needing more attention because they're used to having it and they're not sure why they're not getting it anymore. So, if you can take that few minutes every morning and take your family's emotional temperature, you're going to set yourself up for success for the rest of the day because they'll have had that hit of attention and you'll have a better sense of where everybody's at and what you should expect that day. And then that leads me into decreasing interruption strategy number 2, collaborative agenda setting. So you've spent some time together, you've had your coffee, you've played a game, everyone's feeling, pretty good. Now it's time to figure out what your day looks like. And, if you have a spouse or you're sharing the home as a co-parenting situation, then you need to compare your schedules and figure out what are the things that have to be done and when do they have to be done. And then you're taking into account, especially if your kids are tiny and they need more supervision, who's going to be on kid duty and who's going to be working. But if your kids are older, even 4-year-olds and up, they can be actively involved in this collaborative agenda setting. We're going to talk a little bit later about how to fill this non-school time in a meaningful way, but chunks of time can be blocked out for each of your kids to be working on the things that they want to do. And if you've together talked about what has to get done that day, and this doesn't just have to be job related, it can be household related. If this is the day when the trash needs to be taken out and it's going to rain later, so you have to get the lawn mowed, and the laundry's piling up, so it has to get done today, this is the time to have those conversations and start dividing that up. When everyone feels heard and they're part of the agenda setting, and that everyone records their agenda in their own way. So if you've got a teenager, they can put it in their iPhone, or they can put it in their computer, or they can have their own day planner. That's great. If they're younger and they're pre-writing, they can draw pictures of what their plan is for the day, and you can write beside it what those pictures mean. Okay, if they're in that elementary age group, they can create their own day planner, their own agenda book. They can decorate it, they can put paper together, and they can really make it their own. And that's going to involve them in the decisions. But because you've already taken the family's emotional temperature, you've set yourself up for success by adjusting your expectations and adjusting your agenda accordingly. If it's going to be a rough afternoon because everybody's tired, and you see that you've got a lighter afternoon with work, presentations, or meetings or whatnot, maybe take that time and spend it doing something together as a family so that everyone feels good at the end of that. And that leads us into decreasing interruption strategy number 3. Anyone who's ever been anywhere with children knows that if you're going on a long car ride, you make sure they go to the bathroom before you get in the car. You have water with you, you have snacks with you. If you're going to be running a dozen different errands, you make sure that they have everything they need going in to set yourself up for success. So I suggest that in order to decrease those interruptions, you do the same thing with attention. You front load that attention when you have the time, so they're less demanding when you're busy. So this was back to that collaborative agenda setting. If you know you've got a call from 10 until 12, block out that 15 minutes before the call and spend some quality time with them. And give them another hit of that attention that they so desperately crave at a time that works for you. Okay? And you might be thinking, I don't have time right before that meeting. I need that time to prep. But here's the thing. If you're taking 15 minutes before the meeting to spend with your kids, that's 15 minutes you were going to spend with your kids anyway during the meeting, except you were going to spend it muting and turning off the video and saying, Johnny, stop it, mommy's working, trying to get them a snack when they need it, or bringing the computer down with you and trying to break up sibling disagreements. You're going to be putting the time in anyway. You might as well put the time in when you have the time and when it's high quality interactions. And that brings me to decreasing interruption strategy number 4. Everything they can do for themselves, they should do for themselves. And this goes all the way down to the tiniest humans, okay? We build our confidence by being capable. We build our sense of capability by doing things for ourselves. And it's also a really important part of making sure a household runs. So if your kids can get their own snacks and get themselves dressed and clean up their own breakfast dishes and do any of the other age-appropriate responsibilities by themselves, they don't need to be running to you when you're trying to get work done. They can feel that success of being independent. They're developing those skills that they need so that they're not living in your basement when they're 40. And they're decreasing those interruptions. So that brings me to our next big goal for this little workshop is increasing cooperation, right? You want to decrease those interruptions, but you also want to increase the level of cooperation in the house so that things just go a little more smoothly, okay? This has a direct link to the collaborative agenda setting piece. If you've talked together as a family and you've come up with your plan for the day as a family, you're going to get more buy-in from your kids. If you've just dictated to them that this is what they're doing when, you're going to get a lot more pushback, because we know as adults that when things feel out of our control, when we don't have a lot of autonomy or a lot of voice, we cling to whatever control we possibly can. And kids are no different. They just haven't had 40 years to take the edge off and learn to be more cooperative. So when they're feeling out of control, they want to hold on to whatever they can. So if we are holding on to control and they're holding on to control, we've got this tug of war. And it makes life in the family a lot more challenging. So if we can give them opportunities to have a say, to have a voice in how the family runs, and in also those shared household responsibilities, then they're going to be more cooperative. There's going to be more buy-in. Okay. And something to keep in mind, and this saved me as a teacher, is that choice is your best friend. I remember my very first day as an intern teacher. I taught in a Montessori school in Canada for 15 years. And I said to my principal, do you have any advice for me? And she said, yes, if you get into a power struggle with a 3-year-old, you will lose. So don't do it. And she was absolutely right, because if you back your kids into a corner unnecessarily, they're going to react like little animals backed into a corner because they are. So giving kids choice whenever you possibly can is going to build their autonomy. It's going to build their problem-solving skills. It's going to build their feeling of trust and value in their place in the family. And overall, it's going to lead to more cooperation. But really important to make sure that the choices are age appropriate, first off. You don't ask a 2-year-old, so honey, what do you want to wear today? And the next thing you know, they're pulling clothes out of every closet and every drawer, right? But you can say to them, today is cold, it's a good day to wear pants. Do you want your green pants or your brown pants? You're helping them build some problem solving. They're connecting, okay, it's cold, I should wear pants, but they're getting a choice. When lunchtime rolls around, you don't say to them, what do you want for lunch? Because if they want chicken cordon bleu, you just offered them an open-ended choice. But you can say to them, do you want a peanut butter sandwich or a cheese sandwich? When they get older, they can have more choices. It can be a broader range. So, make sure that the choices you're offering them are age appropriate. And also make sure it's genuinely a choice. If you say to your little one, honey, are you ready to go to bed? Of course they're going to say no. No 4-year-old in the history of time has ever said, of course I'm ready to go to bed. So it's not actually a choice. You need for them to go to bed. They need to go to bed because they're tired. So you say to them, are you going to walk up to bed or do you want me to carry you? Right? It's still a choice, but they're getting up to bed. Or you say to them, do you want me to brush your teeth or can you do it all by yourself? Or you say to them, can you put your pajamas over your head or do you need some help? Do you want your bedtime story before you brush your teeth or after you brush your teeth? You're giving them genuine choices and you're giving them within reasonable limits. And those are really the keys because, your house isn't a democracy and it shouldn't be run that way. The kids don't run the show. But the more opportunity they have for autonomy and freedom of choice, the more cooperation you're going to get and the more practice they get at building those choice skills. So the third piece that we're going to talk about tonight, in addition to increasing cooperation and decreasing interruptions, is how to fill all of that time that you have all of a sudden, especially now that school is going to be ending. So 1 second. So we often think about, what am I going to do to keep my kid busy? What am I going to do to keep my kid entertained? And I'm going to encourage us to take a mental shift away from that entertainment, away from that, it's our responsibility as the adults to come up with things for our kids to do. And I want to present you with a phenomenon that I know you are all very familiar with. You've spent hours or days or weeks even, sourcing the absolute perfect, developmentally appropriate toy that's going to give your kid the leg up. It's going to develop their language skills and their coordination, and it's going to get them into that preschool you've been eyeing, that's going to get them into that high school, and it's going to get them into Harvard, and it's perfect. This toy is perfect. And you bring it to them, and you hand it to them, and their eyes light up, and you think, yes, I nailed it. I am the best gift giver who has ever given a gift. And they take it out of the box, and they set the toy down, and they spend the rest of the day playing with the box. And you think to yourself, what happened? And it's because as loving and as thoughtful as your gift was, it was your love and your thought and your research and your planning and your initiative and your expectation for what the outcome should be with that toy or that gift. The box is just a box. It has no expectations, right? The box is just sitting there until the child turns it into a castle, or the child turns it into a lemonade stand or a puppet theater or a spaceship. The child is bringing their energy and their creativity, and that's turning that simple cardboard box into this amazing thing that keeps them occupied for hours and hours. The box isn't telling them they should be doing it differently. The box isn't telling them there's a more efficient way. The box isn't telling them that they need to play with it for 45 minutes in order to get the full value of its educational purpose. The box doesn't want to take a video and send it to grandma to show them how clever they are. It's just a box until they bring themselves to it. And I'm not suggesting that everyone just buy dozens of cardboard boxes and let their kids just be feral for the rest of the summer. But for millions of kids all over the world, they've spent millions of hours with millions of boxes, and there's something to be learned from that. Kids don't get hung up in the product. Kids get hung up in the process. They dive into the process, the doing, the creating, the making. It's adults who get hung up on the product, right? We're the ones who want a certain outcome for things. And that's reasonable, right? We do a job, we get paid, right? The product is important. But for kids, their product is their process. So I want us to shift a little bit away from thinking about entertaining our kids for the summer and thinking more in terms of a project mindset. And I'm going to go into that a little bit more in a minute. So think about what a project actually is, okay? The definition, according to Google Dictionary, is it's an individual or collaborative enterprise that is carefully planned and designed to achieve a particular aim, okay? So as adults, we think particular aim means product, but that's not the case. For kids, the particular aim is not a product, and I don't think it should be for us either. What if our aim for them for this summer and going forward was to decrease interruptions and to increase cooperation and to build all of those skills that we want them to have when they leave your nest and go out into the world? What if those became the aims of any project that our children worked on this summer, right? If we focused on those things instead of on how the actual activity turned out, whether our kids did it properly or could have found a better way, okay? This is a short list of some of the things that we want our adults, once we've raised them, to be able to do and to have, right? And I think the bottom one is really important. In addition to all of the emotional things and those intangible things, motivation and accountability and self-control, we also want them to be useful humans who can take care of themselves and others. It's a big list. It's an important list. So when I talk about a project, I'm not necessarily talking about something that has a set endpoint. What I'm talking about is something that requires generating an idea, planning, gathering materials, the actual doing, and cleaning up, okay? It can be something that takes an hour. It can be something that takes 3 weeks. My brothers and I, one summer when we were kids, we played Monopoly for the entire summer. We just kept adding board pieces to it. And we made our own money, and we created more real estate. We ran with it and we play with it almost every day because it was something that we came up with. So I'm going to start by talking about middle and high school students and the projects that they can do. Now, I know some of the folks on here have younger kids, and we are absolutely going to get to that. But I want to start with middle and high school kids simply because they're the closest to leaving the nest. So they're the ones who are, in theory, the most responsible and the most mature of the age ranges, but they also need these skills the most and the soonest. So I've put a list there of any number of activities that can be turned into a project, right? Anything that could take anywhere from an hour to a day to the whole summer if they wanted to, based on their attention span and their abilities. So this is just a quick list, okay? But the key is anything can be turned into a project for any age group as long as it's their idea so that they are invested and they are engaged. So the example I'm going to use for high school is a gardening project or a building project. Something that they've decided that they're going to work on, and I just want to walk you through the phases quickly so you get a sense of what that looks like for this age range. So the first phase is always coming up with an idea. So if this is new for them, if they're used to you kind of coming and saying, hey, how about we do this week, then the thought of coming up with something on their own, they might need a little kickstart. But then they brainstorm. And the sky's the limit at this stage because it's all theoretical. right? If they decide that they want to, research and plan how to build a 300-foot birdhouse in front of the garage, right? It's all theoretical. So you don't have to have anything to do with this, right? Your 12-year-old can spend hours brainstorming on their own, okay? And the next phase is planning. This is where things start to get a little bit more real, but it's still really low stakes because they're not doing anything yet, right? They're just writing things down. They're drawing diagrams. They're doing research. Let's say they're building planter boxes for the garden. They have to research, right? Where's the best place to put them in the yard? How much sun do the plants need that I want to plant? How much soil do they need? How many, feet of wood do I need? What tools do we have? What tools do we need to get? All of that is research and problem solving that they're going to use as they become adults. They have to learn how to budget, right? The end of this phase is also the time where you would establish your ground rules and expectations and responsibilities, right? If this is an older kid who knows how to use equipment, saws and drills and all of that, then the expectations are going to be higher and the responsibilities are going to be higher and you're not going to be as needed. But if it's an 11 or 12-year-old who really wants to do this, but they don't yet know how to use a power saw safely, then you're going to talk about the things that they absolutely are not allowed to do and what the expectations and responsibilities are in terms of cleaning up and making sure that they're careful with materials. So you're setting all those things up so that they can then go and be independent. This gathering materials phase is awesome because it teaches them patience and it teaches them planning ahead. Gone are the days of a child waking up in the morning and saying, hey, mom, I want to do this thing. And the parent saying, great, let's get in the car and go pick up everything we need, right? People are going out of their house once every 2 weeks or once every 3 weeks, right? Or you're ordering something on Amazon and it's taking a month to get there. So kids are learning how to delay gratification, right? They're learning how to stay within a budget. And they're learning to use the available materials, right? You might have a shop full of woodworking tools and scraps that they're welcome to use. Or you might have, that brand new beautiful piece of mahogany that you don't want them touching because you're using it for a new mantle. So this is when you're having those conversations, setting those parameters and those guidelines. And this is a great opportunity for them to be creative. Project phase 4 is the actual doing, right? Make sure you're reviewing the safety rules, the expectations, the responsibilities. This may take some lessons, right? They may be really great with a hammer and nails, but they've never used a power drill. They need a lesson in that, okay? This is where time management comes in because we're going back to decreasing interruptions. They don't get to come running into your office in the middle of your meeting and say, okay, I'm ready to learn, time to show me the drill. They need to book you in advance, right? You're doing collaborative agenda setting. So if they tell you on a Tuesday morning when you're setting the agenda that they're ready, they're at that stage in the project, and you happen to have time later that afternoon, great, book it in. But if you've got a packed day, you can say to them, I'm sorry, let's book it in for tomorrow. We'll do it first thing tomorrow morning. I have some free time, okay? Now, I wrote here about the essential two-way promise. This is something as a teenager, I'm sure lots of people have had this with respect to going to parties and drinking. And you had this two-way promise with your parents that your parents would say to you, I promise you that if you call me, I will come and pick you up wherever you are, anytime, day or night, I don't care, right? And we had to promise them that we would never get in the car with someone who'd been drinking. We would never drink and drive ourselves, right? That two-way promise. You can build the same kind of promise in for these sorts of projects. If there are things that your child is absolutely not allowed to do, and then they make a mistake and they need you urgently, you have to make them promise that they will come and get you. If the table saw won't turn off or, something is going wrong and they need you, you have to make them promise that in those emergency situations, they will absolutely come and get you, and you will help them immediately and not lose it on them, right? You may be having a conversation later, but it's important to start building that trust so that they know I can come to you if I get in over my head, and there may be consequences for it. They might have to wait a bit before they can go back to that project, or they might need some supervision with something, but they're building that trust with you and they're learning accountability and integrity. Phase 4 has some challenges for you because you're going to need to be as hands-off as possible. Right? And that's really hard when your 12-year-old is in the kitchen baking a cake, and you're seeing the ingredients, and you're thinking, oh God, they forgot to put in the eggs. This is going to be a disaster. But it's okay, because the product for them is not the cake, right? The product for them is the learning, okay? The other thing that is going to be a challenge for you is to hold tight. If you make an agreement with your child and you've set up boundaries for safety or accountability and they break those agreements, you need to hold tight with the consequences that you've agreed on. That might mean they can't work on the project for the rest of the day, or it might mean that the project gets shut down for the week. If you've agreed on something as a family, you need to hold tight to that. And I know that can be hard when they're looking at you with those puppy dog eyes, but it's an important piece. And then of course, clean up, reviewing those expectations. If they're using your tools, they have a responsibility to put everything back in the spot where, they said it would go. And of course, cleaning up at the end of the project. And that's just part and parcel of exploring and learning and creating. Okay, couple of warnings, and this applies at any age. This isn't just for the older kids or the middle schoolers. This applies at any age. At some point, they will want to quit. Okay, and this is normal because they haven't had that feeling yet. The joy of working hard, the satisfaction of sticking with it, that feeling of doing something difficult and getting through to the other side. So they're going to need you to help them stick with it until they have experienced that enough that they want to feel that on their own. We all know adults who start project after project after project and they just give up because it's too hard, or they lose interest and they go off to something else. If you want to raise an adult who doesn't do that, this is how it starts, okay? This is also going to be really annoying and frustrating for you, and I'm sorry. But they're probably going to be annoying and frustrating anyway because they're 12 to 18-year-olds, and that's just how they roll, okay? If they want to take a break, they've been working on their gardening project for a couple of days and they need a break, they want to go do something else, that's cool. As long as they put everything back where they're supposed to, they can take that break, right? If they take a week off, no problem. They'll come back to it. The place where you need to hold tight is if their planter box is sitting half finished and they come to you and say, hey, Dad, can I borrow $100? I want to get these new watercolor paints to work on my comic book art. That's when you say, sorry, kiddo, I'm happy to work out a loan with you for that after you've finished the project that you already have. This is something that does not just apply to older kids. This is what you are going to be fighting from toddler all the way through, okay? You will have to fight your natural tendency to get kids to do things your way, okay? Your way is better. It's probably faster. It's probably more efficient, okay? But you learned your way by doing, right? If we take away our kids' experience of doing, making mistakes, learning, and then doing it differently, we rob our children of the opportunity to create their own experiences and to learn all of those valuable skills that they need. So regardless of their age, all the way from the teeny tinies, all the way up through when they're ready to leave your nest, unless they're really unsafe, just let it go. So I want to talk about community service. And again, this doesn't just apply to older kids. This is all the way down to little ones, okay? It is amazing for kids to be able to contribute to the world around them in meaningful ways. And the same thing applies here, right? They brainstorm, they generate the ideas, they do the planning, they gather the materials, right? They do the doing and they do the cleaning up. But they get to contribute to the world, and it can be anything. It can be using skills that they have to directly impact other people, right? Sewing masks, tutoring younger kids online, writing letters, writing thank you cards, neighborhood cleanups, helping people who can't necessarily help themselves. Or they can use the skills they do have to make money to donate. I had a student just this year who went around and she learned how to write a professional letter. She's in the 6th grade. She learned how to write a professional letter, and she sent that letter to friends and family requesting donations, and then she gave that money to purchase meals for frontline workers. So that's a great example of a student learning a new skill and using it to help someone else. And this fosters, in every age, empathy and compassion and an awareness of the needs of others, patience, appreciation for the interdependence that we all rely on somebody sometime, and the joy of being needed and using their skills in a meaningful way. And right now, gratitude is especially important because older kids, right, those kind of 10, 11-year-olds and up, they're feeling pretty cheated out of a lot of experiences right now. And it's okay for them to feel that way, but if we can also help them cultivate some gratitude, it's going to benefit their mental health and their resiliency through their whole life. So now we're going to get into some younger kids. Okay. Now this 6 to 12 age range, the same concepts apply as for middle schoolers and high schoolers. It's just that the range of choices needs to be narrower so that they can safely maintain their independence. You might have a high school kid and a 6-year-old, in which case that high school child is going to be, taking on some of the care and some of the responsibility for their younger sibling, not only because it's great practice for them, and it's also sort of the cost of doing business in a household. You help out where you're needed, but that younger sibling is going to just love that time with that older sibling. Younger kids just adore their older sibs. So, you're going to apply the same concepts, and you know your kids best and their responsibility level, right? Your 6-year-old should not be operating the stove unattended, but your 12-year-old can, as long as they know how. Right? But your 6-year-old can be learning to use the microwave, right? There are things that the kids are capable of that you know best, okay? And their greatest success is going to come when we meet them where they are and then give them just a little stretch, that little nudge, because they're either going to make that little stretch and be successful and feel amazing, or they're going to make that little stretch and it's not going to work out, and they're going to learn that the sky didn't fall. So they're going to build that resiliency and figure out a way to do it differently next time. Okay, so same thing, right? It's projects. They have to generate an idea. And again, this doesn't have to be something that takes weeks. This can be baking cookies, right? This can be, they want to write and illustrate a storybook. This can be, they want to, write a play and build the set in the living room and get costumes, all of that, right? They may need a little bit of kickstarting from you, especially if they're used to you coming and saying, okay, today we're going to do this. Give them some initial inspiration and then let them run with it. Planning, same thing. They can do all of the initial planning because it's all theoretical, right? It doesn't matter how wild or crazy their planning is at the beginning because it's all theoretical. It's pencil and paper, okay? And then you can help them with realistic budgeting. And then you can help them understand that if you decide you want to do this project, great. You just need to know that you're responsible for X, Y, and Z. Okay? The gathering materials phase is very similar to older kids, right? Now, in this case, they're going to come running to you for things unless you establish a scenario where running to you doesn't get them the answers that they need. Running to you just gets them questions, right? If they come and say, I want to make cookies, you say, great, do we have the ingredients? And off they go. And they come running back, we don't have chocolate chips, we don't have butter, we don't have eggs. Say, okay, how would the person who gets groceries know that in our house, this is how we know what we need to go shop for? And, guide them towards putting them on the list rather than just saying, look, if you want to make cookies, you need to do this, and you need to do this, and you need to do this, right? Let them figure out that gathering materials phase, okay? They may need help with ordering materials if they're planning kind of a bigger project, especially if you don't want to give them your credit card, which I completely understand. But the same time management piece applies. Let's say they're 8 and they've been doing a lot of like needlepoint or crocheting or knitting, and they're ready to learn to use the sewing machine because they have a project they want to work on. They need to talk to you ahead of time. They can't just come running into your meeting and say, I am ready now. Show me how to use the sewing machine now. They have to be respectful of your time, because the goal here is to get you a chunk of time without interruptions and get them a chunk of time where they're building their independence, okay? The actual doing, again, depending on the project, they may need a little bit of your help with certain pieces, but then you back off and you let them do everything else, okay? It might not work out the way an adult would envision it working out, right? The cake might be flat, the cookies might be rock hard, the play might be a flop, their plants might die. It's okay. We as adults might be thinking this is an unnecessary waste and an unnecessary expense because we get hung up on the product. But let's go back to what we talked about with the aims of any project, right? Decreased interruptions, increased cooperation, and learning all of those skills and attitudes and values that they need to be a successful adult. So if that's the product, regardless of how the thing actually turned out, everybody wins because they've learned from it and they've grown from it. Okay? And then of course, cleaning up, same thing. You make sure that they understand the expectations and that they make a mess, they clean it up. And again, anything can be a project, right? It doesn't have to be something that you plan in advance that takes the entire summer. It can be they decide that morning that they want to do a new craft project, and they think about it, they plan, they scour the house, they find the materials, and they work on it. As long as they initiate, they're learning from it. Okay? And community services is hugely important for this group as well, because they're just starting to realize that there's a world beyond the bubble that they've been living in. So they're really at a beautiful age to start contributing to the world in a different way. And this brings us to the preschool range. So admittedly, this is my favorite age range. They are so much fun and they have so much potential, provided we set the stage for them a little bit. They have shorter attention spans and they don't have the ability to long range plan. So they're not going to come to you with an idea to build a garden box and put it outside. They also require more supervision to do bigger projects safely. Right? So if you're going to do something with them that involves the stove, of course you need to be there with them. But if the goals here are to get them a chunk of time to develop their independence, their concentration, their self-motivation, and to get you a chunk of time without interruptions, then it doesn't have to be a big project, right? Anything can be a project. If they come up with an idea, they plan it, they gather the materials, they actually do it, and they clean it up. Of course, it's going to look different for a 3 to 6 year old than it does for a 12-year-old or a 16-year-old. Absolutely, it looks different. But with a little planning, many of the activities that they already do can be turned into independent projects. Okay? Things that are already in your house, activities that they already do on a daily basis. But we shift the focus away from you initiating it as entertainment to them initiating it independently. So, with this age range, preparing the environment is huge. If they've got a room full of toys and some of the things in there aren't safe for them because they're for their older sibling, some of the things in there are way too young and they would never go to anyway. Some of the things in there require adult supervision because they're messy. Some of the things that are perfect for them are in boxes and containers they can't open. And some of the other things that are perfect for them are up on a high shelf. You've just set them up to be running into you every 10 seconds because they need you. So if you put a little bit of time when you have it into preparing the environment, you get far fewer interruptions when you don't have the time because you're busy and you need them to be occupied with something else, okay? Narrow their choices. Make sure that the only things they have access to are absolutely appropriate for them. Put everything on a shelf where they can reach it. Get rid of all the messy stuff, right? Take out the glue, take out the glitter, take out the paint, take out the Play-Doh, any of those things for the 3 to 4 year olds, just take it out, okay? Especially if you've got a wall drawer, okay? Take it away so that you don't have to put them in a situation where they independently created art on the walls while you were busy, and then you came in and had to deal with the aftermath later, okay? If there's any way to have child-sized furniture for them or safe little step stools so they can reach things without your help, okay? Transfer some of those activities into child-friendly containers, open-topped bins or boxes that they can take the lid off, so that those activities that are perfect for them, they can actually access them without needing to run to you, okay? And again, this goes back to you're going to be putting in effort anyway, right? You're working so hard to run the household and keep the kids occupied and do everything that needs to be done for your job. You're already putting in all of that time and effort. Let's just channel it a little differently. Put in the prep ahead of time so that they can explore the area when you're busy and they don't need you for it. Okay, so this is just a quick list of ideas for that kind of younger 3 and 4 age range. And again, these age ranges are approximate. You know, you might have a 3-year-old who's super mature, never puts anything in their mouth, and is a wizard with safety scissors. Then it's your decision what you want them to have access to. You may have a 6-year-old who's still a wall drawer. Okay, so you know your kid best. You're the expert on your own child. I just want to draw your attention to the dress up clothes piece. Kids often don't learn to dress themselves because there isn't time. You're trying to get them out the door in the morning and they want to do it themselves and there isn't time. So you end up stuffing them in their shoes and, you know, pulling their shirt on over their head and out you go. This is a great opportunity for them to start learning those things in a very low stakes environment, right? You're not racing out anywhere. It's their dress up clothes, right? Things with big buttons or things with Velcro, things with snaps that they can start learning to do themselves. Okay, and then this is just a continuation of that same list. You know, fine motor control activities, you know, pouring beans, stringing beads, all those kinds of things that they can do independently. You know, most kids by 3 and 4, they're not putting everything in their mouth anymore, so you've got some more flexibility about that. Okay. And then the older end of that age range, they can do all of the things we talked about, but they can also handle the safety scissors, the Play-Doh, the crayons, the markers, the glue sticks, without needing to be supervised every second, you know, or maybe your child does, and that's okay. Use your good judgment, but they're ready for more of those things, more trust, more freedom, more choices, and more responsibility to clean it up when they're finished. Okay. The other thing that we have to shift our mindset a little bit with is supervision. I remember when I was a very new teacher and I was in, you know, this Montessori classroom and I was watching these children working so beautifully, and then when I sat down beside this 4-year-old and I thought, you know, well, I'm the grown up, obviously I have something to contribute here. I should, you know, tell him he's doing a great job and maybe make a suggestion or two. And he just looked up at me with this just disdain in his eyes and he put the activity away. He was done. Because I had inserted myself into his learning, and that just ruined the joy for him. So we don't have to tell our kids they're doing a great job all the time. We don't have to come over and say, oh, look at that puzzle that you're doing. Why don't you try putting that piece over there, right? They don't need us to do that. We can peek our head around the corner. If they're happy and they're occupied and they're safe, it's okay to hightail it out of there without them ever knowing that you were there. Right? But then you're asking yourself, how are these things actually projects? And it's because they're self-directed. They choose, right? Your 4-year-old decides they want to draw a picture. Bam, they just idea generated, okay? They know they need the materials to do that. They know they need to know where the crayons are. They need to know where the paper is. They need to make sure that there's a space cleared at their table to do that, right? That's planning. They go and get the things that they need. Then they sit down and they create their picture, and then they clean up their mess, right? Maybe it was 10 minutes, maybe it was 20 minutes, maybe it was a half an hour. It's still a project because they created it, right? Decreased interruptions, increased cooperation, and they've developed some concentration, some independence, the ability to choose, all of those skills that they need going through life. Okay, and this brings us down to the very tiniest of humans, that 18-month to 3-year age range. And even for these little guys, if we think about the definition of a project, right, something that's planned and has a particular aim, right? But if we reframe it to fit toddler developmental characteristics, right? Toddlers don't collaborate. They don't share. They're not built to share. So asking them to share is setting them up for failure. It's not fair, right? They rarely follow directions. So their planning and gathering and doing and cleaning up phases are going to look really different, okay? But the principles remain the same. They make a choice, they get what they need, they do, and they clean up. So let's take a step back for a second. Think about how we often interact with toddlers, right? We want them to explore their environment. So we give them lots of space and lots of freedom to move around. And then we follow them around going, no, honey, don't touch that. Oh, no, that's daddy's. Oh, no, let's put that down. Oh, no, come on over here. That's not safe for you. So we think that we've given them freedom to explore, but what we've actually done is limited their learning because we're intervening every time. If we give them a smaller space that is prepared for them, okay, very similar to how you prepare it for the preschool or 3, 4, 5-year-old age. If you prepare an environment that's child-sized, safe, accessible containers, and appropriate activities, right? Even if that means if both parents are busy, or if it's a one-parent family, and you've set up a space in the room where you're working, right, where they can't escape, but it's carefully and thoughtfully prepared for their learning. They get to develop their independence, their concentration, their coordination, and their self-direction. Okay, toddlers don't have long attention spans. You might get yourself 10 minutes, or maybe 20 minutes, or maybe half an hour. Right? But that's more than most parents of toddlers get when they give them wide open spaces and have to chase them around. So if you prepare that environment really carefully and then leave them alone and let them explore, you're going to get yourself a little bit of that time for you to do things, and you're building so many amazing opportunities for them as well. And maybe you'll get 30 minutes in the morning, and then maybe you'll actually get a little bit of time later in the day too, right? And all of a sudden that time starts adding up. And that's, again, more than a lot of parents of toddlers get. Okay, so those are sort of the age range specific things. We've got a few minutes left, so we started a couple minutes late. So I just want to give a quick word about meals and snacks. If you are expected to feed everyone all the time, you are never going to get anything done. One of the main complaints I hear from parents is that their kids just are constantly coming into them because they're hungry, or because they think they're hungry and they really just want to connect. So involving the family in the meal planning and prep, and especially in the snack planning, is going to be really, really important. The night before, depending on the age and stage of your child, get them involved in prepping their snacks. Like, they can go to the fridge and they can get out their little bottle of water, or their little bottle of milk. They can get out their fruit or their yogurt or their vegetables, right? They can get their things off the counter. If they have, it's like preparing that environment. If you prepare the snacks with them that are accessible to them, that are safe for them, that are healthy for them, they can go and get those things without needing to run to you every second. Make sure, of course, that they're safe, right? You wouldn't leave grapes as a snack for a 4-year-old unsupervised, but it starts to get them understanding that they can do things for themselves, and that you are not their servant. Okay? And we talked about household responsibilities before, but if we go back to that for a minute, it should be expected that everyone contribute in the household. Everyone needs to have skin in the game, and it's not just about building those skills for when they leave your house. It's that they understand that everyone in the family is valuable, and everyone is important, and everyone is needed. And yes, it takes longer in the beginning to show them how to do things. Absolutely, it does. But in the long run, it's going to take a lot less time because they're going to be useful. Years ago, when I was teaching a family that the father had older children and then younger kids, and his older children hadn't gone through a Montessori program, and his younger two did. And he was telling us at a parent night that with his older two, it was just faster to do everything for them. And then they got older, and he realized that they didn't have the same confidence or the same capabilities. So with his younger ones, he wasn't going to make that same mistake. He referred to it as enlightened self-interest. If I put the time in now when they're little, it's going to pay off down the road. So quick recap, okay? The goals for this summer and the goals for their lives in general, even after things kind of start to go back to some sort of new normal, should be to increase their life skills and the attitudes and values that contribute to them becoming successful adults. Okay, and we can do that through projects and through household responsibilities and chores. We want to decrease the interruptions for you, okay, and increase the cooperation between the family. Okay, these strategies do require some effort on your part, okay, but you're already putting in a huge amount of effort, right? So many families are trying to juggle all of these things, and they're putting in all this effort just to stay afloat. If we can apply that same amount of effort or even less effort, but in a different way. Imagine if you could actually start swimming to shore instead of just treading water. Or, I use the analogy at the beginning about how I'm a guided parenting support, a GPS along for the ride. And if you can get out of that, wheels are spinning, but you're stuck in the mud, and actually get the car moving by putting in the same amount of effort or less. It would be amazing for you and for your whole family. Cut yourself some slack, okay? You don't have to have the entire summer mapped out ahead of time. It's okay for your kids to be bored sometimes, and it's okay for them to come to you and say that they have, that they have an idea, and you let them run with it. If you keep those 3 goals in mind, and just let the summer unfold, with a balance of independence and connection, and freedom and responsibility, and learning opportunities for them. So it's just a couple minutes after 8. So if anyone has to go, I totally understand.